Good afternoon to everyone. We are here in this session organized by Global Compact Network Italy. I'm here in Milano, hosted by Salone CSR and Social Innovation. And with me there is also Daniela Bernacchi from of UN Global Compact Italy, but we have also two guests that are following and that will be part of this important session, connected from abroad. Later we will discover where, and they are Lila Carbassi and Steve Kenzie. Before introducing them, there is a video that presents the activities of UN Global Compact, so I ask to send the video. Thank you.
A world in which we're not making any changes and we continue with business as usual on CO2 emissions is a very scary world. It's a world where you have extreme weather events, where we're facing water shortage, food shortage. So it's a catastrophic scenario, and we do not want that.
UN Global Compact, together with the World Resources Institute, World Wildlife Fund, CDP, and other professional organizations in this space, is working to try to get 20% of all major corporations in each major sector to commit to fully decarbonize. Because we believe once you get 20% to a quarter to a third, it then becomes unstoppable.
Companies that internalize climate action, disclose their climate-related risks in their value chain, might have a price on carbon, have active decarbonization plans in place, are more profitable and are growing faster.
Climate change is all about carbon emission. Carbon emission is all about energy, the way we consume it, the way we produce it. So we have to consume less and we have to produce it better.
Global issues cannot be done by just one single company or a single industry, nor a single countries. So we all have to come together, take the all-of-society approach to achieve it.
Well, a very effective video, and we start with this introduction that goes straight to the heart of the problem, and the question here is, can we proceed in this way with the way we are producing, with the business model as it is, and consuming and using so badly energy? Because energy is the key issue here. And we are here in this 2021, and we know that this is a special year for several reasons, but we don't refer to COVID-19, we refer to what is happening at international level about climate change, and how in the world we are tackling this issue. In few days there will be the COP26 hosted in Glasgow, but now we are coming from the pre-COP, so the pre-conference on parties that has been here in Milano. So this is also why the title of this section is From Milan to Glasgow, UN Global Compact Commitment on Climate Ambition. And this climate ambition, as we have heard from the video, is crucial in order to change the business model. And I believe that we have plenty of input to understand that there is no time to postpone to tackle this issue. I know that in Italy we have 19 companies that follow the science-based target, so not a lot, but plenty of companies that are aware about the urgency about the climate change. We believe that organizations like United Nations Global Compact, so the private sector at worldwide level have a crucial role in order to endorse and also to push companies to change the business model. So I am very happy to ask to our first speaker, that is Lila Karbassi, Chief of Programs, United Nations Global Compact. She is thank you, Lila, for being with us. And my question to you is started from the agenda of the Paris Agreement. So climate change is crucial in that. And in the light of the recent data from the latest IPCC report, what role can the private sector play today in fighting the climate change? Which is the role for the private? Because usually we believe, common people think that it's a matter of state, government, and so on. But what is the role for the private sector?
Thank you, Chiara, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. And thanks for having me on this panel. And you're absolutely right. There is a very, very crucial role for the private sector to play. There is a role for the governments to regulate and put the right measures in place. And then private sector companies are accountable to that. But in the absence of the regulation, the right measures, the private sector can also, on a voluntary basis, make huge contributions to this agenda, and they have everything to gain from doing that. The IPCC report, as you mentioned, is essentially highlighting the need for very urgent action if we want to meet the target of the Paris Agreement, and we really don't have a plan B. So everyone is, responsible to make the right contribution to enable us to stay within the temperature increase that is stable in terms of the way that the environment reacts. So what are the things that the private sector can do? I'll mention three things briefly. One is decarbonization, two is building resilience, and three is working with governments to have the right policies in place. In terms of decarbonization, you mentioned the Science-Based Target Initiative and the 19 companies that are part of it from Italy. We want to see more. The Global Compact is one of the core partners under SBTI, Science-Based Target. Many companies have set targets. We estimate that there are about 4,200 companies that have set targets, but only 20% of those targets are actually aligned with the Science-Based Target Initiative. So we need to have every company have their targets validated in a way that is compatible with the 1.5 degree trajectory, because Science-Based Target has now increased its level of ambition, and it only validates targets that are aligned with 1.5, no more 2 degree or well below 2 degree. So that's the effort around decarbonization. It needs to happen fast, and it needs to happen at large scale. In terms of resilience and understanding of your risks as a company, how to reduce your vulnerability, your exposure to climate change, and therefore how to make better judgments in terms of investments, we recommend disclosing your risks through the TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. And as the understanding of the risk increases, then also investing in adaptation measures to build resilience for your company, but also for the communities and for the most vulnerable that will be affected by the effects of climate change. And then thirdly, I mentioned policy. This is also a very crucial role for any company that can lobby for policies that would enable all of us to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. So you can voice your support for things like pricing of CO2, things like renewable energy incentives, any sort of green investment incentives that could be put in place from a regulatory perspective. You as a company can provide your support for that. And there's been a host of partners that have collected support from 600 business leaders ahead of the G20 summit at the end of this month to call on governments to step up their climate action. And we recommend companies to follow that and align with those policy supports as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lila. You mentioned the G20. I believe that from the business side, it's also important to mention the B20, the Business Leader 20, because it's another way for a private sector to be leading this change. And you mentioned also resilience and lobbies, and later we will be back on this. But now, let me introduce Steve Kenzie, the Executive Director of UN Global Compact Network UK. Thank you, Steve, to be here with us, even if you are in UK. And I want to introduce a question to you. Starting from recognizing the role of UK. UK has, for several reasons and in several parts, has been leading this journey, this challenge. If I am an academic, also academia devoted plenty of resources, financial but also intellectual capital, in order to develop framework for tackling these issues. But also the UK private sector is taking a leading role in climate efforts, finance, but generally speaking, all the private sector. But in this rush and in this trip that you are leading, I am interested in understanding what have been the impacts, if any, of COVID-19 in this journey. We know that environmental and social aspects are interrelated, so I ask you if COVID-19 impacted in somehow in this leading role that you are proposing.
Thanks very much, Chiara, and thanks also for having me join you today. It's a real pleasure to be with you. I think it's a really interesting question, and I think that there's an obvious way that COVID has affected climate action and a less obvious way. The obvious way we saw last year when everybody was locked down, they weren't driving their cars, industry was closing down, and we saw emissions plunge. But that's not a sustainable way to lock in emissions reductions. And so I think what's more interesting is the less obvious impact. We would normally expect when there's such a profound economic downturn, as was caused by the pandemic, that investments in sustainability might be reduced. We saw that in 2008 with the financial crisis, where CSR and sustainability departments were cut back. Companies pulled back from their commitments in that space. We've not seen that this time. In fact, we've seen growth, and Lila mentioned science-based targets, and while there's still a long ways to go, we have seen fantastic growth in the number of companies committing to science-based targets over the course of the last 18 months. And my theory for this, and I think it's worth considering, we've seen in industry over the last decade or more a race for finding efficiency wherever we could, just-in-time business models, seeking to just save wherever we could, always a focus on efficiency, and without really recognizing that comes at the expense of resilience. And now here we've had this fantastic shock of the pandemic that has impacted global supply chains in so many ways. And now we're seeing a recognition that the companies that were more sustainable were more resilient, and as a result of that, we're able to better weather the challenges that the pandemic brought. And I think that's created a new recognition in business that this is, well, on one hand, almost a rehearsal for the challenges that we face in the future around climate, and a recognition that building resilience into our business models is absolutely critical. And so I think what we've seen as a result of this, certainly the Global Compact has been growing fantastically over the course of the last 18 months. We've got over 14,000 business participants. That's probably at least 1,000 more than we had a year ago. The Science Based Targets Initiative is growing. We're seeing ever more interest in these issues of sustainability and resilience. And so I think what we're seeing from the pandemic is actually a recognition that sustainability is absolutely business critical. And in fact, it's turned out that it's helped, I think, to advance this agenda. And then a final point on this, which again, I think is a little bit less obvious, but the transformation that we need in our societies in the way we conduct business, if we're going to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals or the Paris Agreement, we're going to require quite profound transformations in our societies. And I would have to say, before the pandemic, many people would have thought the scale of transformation we needed was impossible. But now we've just seen it. We've seen the way we could just change our society so profoundly, almost overnight, when the crisis demanded it. And so I think that's also a cause for a degree of optimism, that now we recognize that we actually can change profoundly, very quickly, if we recognize the urgency. And so I think that's the new challenge, is to recognize that urgency so that we start making the kind of change that's really needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. You refer to the urgency of the change, and the question was about the pandemic COVID-19. We may say that it has been a tragedy. It's still a tragedy in some part of the world where there is no vaccination, no possibility to vaccine a lot of people. But somehow it has also been an opportunity to accelerate in the process of the change of business model. In fact, the European Commission reacts quickly, promptly, and allocated a relevant amount of resources to support and help member states to tackle the shock of COVID-19. And I asked to Daniela Bernacchi, the Executive Director of UN Global Compact Network Italy, that is here in Milano with me. Thank you, Daniela. And I ask you, which is your view on the role of this Next Generation EU and the translation in Italy, the PNRR, resilience, by the way, in the change that we are tackling now. So which is the role of this Next Generation EU?
Thank you, Chiara. And yes, Italy has been hit very, very severe from the pandemic. We are still in our recovery phase. I would like to say that before the pandemic, Europe was already at the forefront of the interest and the challenge to tackle carbon neutrality, because we must remember that in 2019 the Green Deal was launched. So in Europe we already had a great sensitivity on that, and the Green Deal was planned to invest more on circular economy as an enabler of the transition, or also clean mobility, and of course all the adaptation and mitigation issue and biodiversity. Then we had the pandemic in 2020, and in 2021 the Next Generation EU. This plan gives us a huge amount of money that the state member decided to use for a sustainable recovery, and the total amount is 750 billion euro, which is quite a lot. And the plan forecasts to use 40% of the total amount just for climate action, which is very interesting. On top of that, we must say that our country is one of the largest recipients of this money. And so we could, thanks to this money, prepare our resilience recovery plan. This plan is in total 210 billion euro, which is very, very important, and 40% of the total amount is dedicated to carbon neutrality and climate action. So the highest amount is on that. Then we have digitalization and social inequality, because we must always remember that the two things goes together. If we don't work properly on climate, then we will have many problems in society, and as a matter of fact, migration due to climate is the highest percentage we have. So with this plan, we think that also company will benefit a lot, and especially for example tax credit or investment in changing their production model in a more sustainable way. So it's an opportunity for state member, but for business as well, to change their way of working and invest towards carbon neutrality.
Thank you, Daniela. So we heard that European Commission, let's say the public part of the game, has devoted plenty of resources enabling this change. But now I would like to use the experience of Lila again, Lila Carbassi from UN Global Compact, asking to you, Lila, from your point of view, from the point of view of the global UN Global Compact, can you tell us something about the level of commitment on climate change from the side of the private sector? Because here in Europe we had this Next Generation EU, but what about the level of commitment of companies that you are witnessing in your work? What tools and initiative has the Global Compact developed in order to assist, support, push, somehow foster this change, and also some results, if any? So, Lila.
Yeah, that's a great question. The level of commitment from the private sector is encouraging, but it's not enough. We have done research recently with our partners at CDP on the alignment of G7 stock indices with the Paris Agreement. And we've published the results there, and although there is a very significant increase in the number of companies that are supporting science-based targets, the G7 stock indices are not currently on a pathway to reach the limit of 2 degree increase in temperature, and some of the stock indices in some G7 countries actually are showing that they're moving towards a dangerous temperature pathway of 3 degrees or above. So those companies that emit the most are the target for a rapid change of business model, so that they align with the trajectory that we need to see around 1.5. And we're not there yet. We have many companies, but the ones that matter the most are the ones that emit the most, and we need to get them also to be aligned with science-based targets. In terms of the investors, the pension funds and asset owners, asset managers, particularly on the side of asset holders, you can see the level of commitment through an initiative called the Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance, which today represents more than 4.6 trillion in assets under management. So again, this is unprecedented to have so many investors looking at how to decarbonize their portfolio and their investment choices. The tools that we're providing to kind of make sense of all of that, we're working on two fronts. We're working on setting clear standards. So with our partners at the Science-Based Targets, our partners are the CDP, the WRI, World Resources Institute, WWF, and Women Business Coalition. Next month, actually just before the COP, we're going to release the standard for net zero commitments. And that's, it's an important step forward, because there are lots of announcements of how companies are going about net zero by 2050. But these 5 organizations are coming together to bring clarity around what the standard looks like, what your pathway looks like in terms of, the speed in which you decarbonize, the scope of your decarbonization around scope 1, scope 3, scope 2, scope 3, removal activities of CO2 from the atmosphere, the use of offset once you've decarbonized at a level that will be consistent with 1.5, what do you do with nature-based solutions and all of that. So all of these concepts basically are going to be clarified through the net zero standard that is coming out very, very shortly. So we're working on the standard front, and we're working on building the pipeline of companies, increasing their readiness to actually become science-based target and net zero. And we do that through our local networks, and of course with Italy and the UK that are here. But we also have 25 local networks that have signed up to a climate ambition accelerator, and the purpose of that is to essentially mainstream science-based target setting in different places in the world, and build a pipeline of companies that would be ready to have their targets validated and eventually, reach net zero. So we're working on, in terms of tools, on lots of learning activities, lots of sharing of practices, showing what the leading companies are doing so that it inspires others, and creating the right conditions for companies to be able to succeed in decarbonizing their efforts and portfolios. And most recently, we've actually started working with the CFOs in companies. So we have a CFO task force. It launched in December of 2019, and today we have 60 CFOs that are looking at themselves in terms of custodians of billions of investments, what their contribution can be. And these 60 CFOs have set a collective targets for themselves to invest at least 400 billion in the next 3 years, align with the SDGs and the Paris Agreement, and link close to 50% of all of their corporate financing to sustainability performance. So, of course, we want 100%, but we're working towards that. Already we have a commitment to link at least 50% to be able to measure that and track that and see the impact around sustainability and very importantly around climate as well. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lila. It's an impressive list of deliverables. Congratulations from my side, from all of us, and really thanks for what you are doing, because I believe it's important to have this, let me say, balance between education, sharing good practice, pushing, accelerating. So you are playing a really important role. And coming again to Steve, so back to UK. UK network is really well populated, let me say, Steve. I mean, you have really good and big companies in your network. And as we know, climate change, sustainability, but especially climate change, is a journey, a never-ending story, and we have always to raise the bar. What are you doing to help companies to raise the bar and to avoid to stay so much on the level that they get?
Thanks, Chiara. Well, we're very much inspired by the fantastic work that our colleagues in New York are leading on, and we certainly plan our own programming as best we can to support that and to advance that agenda. We tend to work at a more practitioner level, not engaging CFOs and CEOs quite so much, but working with CSR and sustainability managers and directors. And we offer quite a wide range of engagement opportunities on climate. We recognize that this is a whole really big agenda, and it's important that we think of climate change within a broader, more holistic agenda, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, but climate really has to be a priority area. And so, again, as a preface, Leila mentioned that there are 70 local networks around the world, and so we all have different priorities and different capacity to deliver different levels of programming. So whatever country someone might be from, there will be a variety of engagement opportunities. Leila mentioned the Climate Action Accelerator, and we're very happy to be participating in that, and that's been a fantastic program because that's a basic and an advanced track, recognizing that companies are operating at different speeds as well as the local networks. And so it's been a really well-received program. We're also doing a couple of webinar series in the lead up to COP26. Anybody that's been following along with COP26 will be aware it's been very challenging to plan events or to plan one's involvement because of all the uncertainty around the COP, around the COVID crisis. So we decided to invest in advance with some pre-COP programming. We've been doing a webinar series on net zero, the race to net zero, where we've been looking sector by sector at the challenges that are unique to each sector. Just this morning, we looked at retail, for example. We're also doing a webinar series in support of the race to resilience and the importance of building greater resilience to the climate change impacts that we know are definitely coming. In the UK, we have a working group that supports our members to comply with the recommendations of the TCFD, the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. That provides a lot of value to them. The TCFD is widely recognized as quite an important reporting platform for companies. We've done some programming around Scope 3. For just about every company, Scope 3 represents their biggest climate challenge. And one of the things that makes Scope 3 so difficult is because it's not something a company can fix for themselves. They can go change their own light bulbs, they can buy electric vehicles, they can switch to renewable energy, but they can't decarbonize the supply chain without bringing in partners and often even working across with their competitors, which can be particularly challenging. So we focused a lot of our attention around Scope 3 and how can we help create some of those coalitions that are necessary to move it along. And the last thing I wanted to mention is something that I'm quite proud of. It's a simple program. We've been doing climate Q&A surgeries, and basically we just get a couple of climate experts, people that work on climate change full time, and we just get them into a Zoom call, and we invite all of our sustainability generalists to come along and ask them questions. Every sustainability director will have a wide number of issues that they're concerned about: diversity and inclusion and human rights and water and waste, all of these things. But it's also true that for just about everyone, climate is their top priority. And so by giving a chance to speak to someone who works on climate full time, it's just a really simple way to give some value to our participants, and it's been very well received. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Steve. So you did a lot of works, and you also tried to spread out the competence of this expert with the last initiative you mentioned and you referred to. But now I'm really interested also in the Italian experience, and Daniela, as Executive Director of the Global Compact Network Italy, I ask you if you can share with us what about the Italian experience, what are you doing, the Italian network really, and what are you planning to do to support the Italian companies, and also not only in the journey to reach this climate ambition, but also to share and to showcase the good experience that we have, because I believe that let me tell you, Lila and Steve, usually here in Italy, we depict us worse than we are. We believe that we are not so good and we are not really optimistic about, but really we need to showcase plenty of good example of good experience. So what are you doing?
Yes, thank you for the question. This year we launched a specific webinar series on climate. And starting from the explanation, the sharing of EU taxonomy and TSD reporting, because we do believe that having common indicators and key indicators to report the progress, as you were saying, or also the difficulties companies have in their process toward decarbonization is very important. In our series, we also talk about climate governance, so how important is to have in our strategy the climate issue as one of the mainstream in order to adapt also the company to this new challenge, and also, of course, a science-based target. And I totally agree with what Lila and Steve were saying before. We can raise the ambition and have more company engaged, but also we are aware that the supply chain is the real challenge, because involving the supply chain in the decarbonization process is not as easy as working on our own industrial district. So this is something we're working on. We are aware it's a process, but also we are quite confident that the interest in these subjects will increase. This year, we also try to have a high-level event with our CEOs. So all our CEOs were involved in sharing the best practice on decarbonization and working on a common paper on it. And last but not least, we had an event on our pre-COP26 at the end of September involving youth and talking about the role of young leaders towards decarbonization. So different subjects, institutional and policy level, CEOs, but especially, as Steve was saying, we are working with sustainability director and manager.
Time is running so fast, but I'm looking for a third round, a quick third round. So I go back to Lila, if I may. And Lila, the last question. There are plenty of questions, but really we have time constraint. 2021 is a unique year for climate action, with the pre-COP hosted by Italy and then COP26 that will be held in UK. Which are the expectations of UN system, especially from your side, UN Global Compact, from these negotiations? And will you participate, and how will you participate to the process?
Yes, we will participate. The expectations are set by the Secretary General of the UN to have climate finance accelerated, to have better, sort of ambition around adaptation and resilience, and also very important. I don't think we've mentioned that. Is to work on green jobs, on what the concept of just transition. What are all these these jobs in the business models that are going to transition to green business models. What are these jobs going to be in the future, and how can we ensure that there is decent work for everybody in the future. So these are the strong expectations. Of course, it goes without saying, enhanced nationally determined contributions for all member states, and particularly for those that are emitting the most. So the expectation is to see those governments come with stronger plans for their national contributions. We are convening the companies and the CEOs to meet with the Secretary General of the UN and the other parts of the UN as well, and the UK and the Italian government, and the next incoming presidency of the COP. This is our Caring for Climate event. This year it will take place on the 10th of November. It will be a hybrid event, some people in person, some people online. We hope to see a good dialogue around the themes of net zero by 2050 and jobs and just transition. We're also organizing a host of different events throughout the COP, most of them online, on water, on ocean, on finance. We hope to see many companies participate and many of our local networks engaged and bring their companies from their countries as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lila. And again, social aspects and environmental issues are really interrelated, also from your answer and from the contribution that you as United Nations Global Compact are providing to this COP26. And Steve, we are close to COP26 in Glasgow. Within a month we will be there, and UK government is preparing to host COP26. And I wonder if you can share with us your perspective on the contribution of the private sector, how the private sector will be involved in this forum, because the private sector is crucial to reach our ambitious target.
Thanks, Chiara. Before I answer your question, though, I want to just give your comment about how the Italians view themselves, and I feel I should give an external perspective on that, if I may. So I just wanted to say that within the Global Compact community, that Daniela and the chairman of the Italian network, Marco, are very well respected, and the Italian network is one of the leading networks in our community. And so I really strongly encourage Italian business to join them and engage. And I know a number of Italian companies are amongst the real leaders in our CFO task force on sustainable finance. So the external perspective is one that your country is leading in many ways. With COP26, it has, I mentioned earlier, been quite difficult to organize programming around the COP. So I'll be very brief to say our event on the 10th is undoubtedly going to be unmissable and one of the most important ones, so everyone should plan to join that. The We Mean Business Coalition will have a pavilion set up in the Blue Zone with programming every day across a range of themes. And if you visit their website, you will be able to see at least a general breakdown of the subject matter that they'll be addressing every day, and there will be a variety of programs there. Every country pavilion will have, or most will have exhibition space, and there will be events. It's just generally recognized that governments will be making the NCDs, that they will be making their voluntary the commitments, but they will recognize the only way they're ever going to achieve them is by working through their business communities. So there will be business voice and business involvement every step of the way through the COP, and anyone that's there will have a large number of engagement opportunities. And I think we have an important role to show the high level of ambition that business has, thereby to inspire our governments to step up their levels of ambition and make sure that this COP is a big success. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, and I thank you also for the endorsement and the appreciation for the Italian network. This appreciation I convey to Daniela. I believe it's fantastic also to have this appreciation for the terrific work that the Italian network are doing. So congratulations also from my side. But I want to go back, and this is the last question due to time constraints. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but in Italy, but really we have time for the last question. You refer before to the youth, to the Gen Z. And in Milano, we hosted the pre-COP26, and the Italian government devoted plenty of time and a due amount of time to argue about the role of this youth, of the youth. So how can companies enhance, improve the contribution of youth and be more open-minded, let me say, and facilitate somehow the contribution of this new generation, the Gen Z, to work for the climate challenge in a win-win? Because I don't think that it's fine to have a fight between generations. This is not a game we can play, but we have to engage with them, and we also perhaps to listen to them. So what can we do?
Thank you, Chiara. This is a very interesting question, and it's true. During the pre-COP, we saw a lot of protests, but also we stimulated these young people to share with us visionary solutions, and so to turn it in a positive way. And there were 400 young people that participated to the pre-COP, and they were asking basically 4 things. All their meeting were around 4 pillars. The first one was driving ambition. So as you were saying, they really wanted to be listened and also to join the negotiation. Then they were talking about sustainable recovery, asking governments to set rules and a new law and in order to recover in a sustainable way. And then they were also asking non-state actors, so our main stakeholder like companies, to decarbonize their production process and to work seriously on reducing their own emission. And the last thing they were asking were to be conscious of the climate priority, so to educate consumers and citizens that the climate action is not only needed, but it's urgent. So saying that, what are we doing as a Global Compact? We have a specific program called Young Innovators, and it's an accelerator as well, and we involve the young people, no matter the role they are or the sector they're working in, to provide innovative solutions and to share best practice, visiting companies, participating to workshops and webinars, and being in contact with institutions so that they can be stimulated in giving a proactive way. And I think all companies could involve the young staff and talented people in this working group towards a better world and climate action together.
Thank you, Daniela. It's time to close only this session, really, because we have a lot to do, a challenge to win, not only to tackle. And I want to thank Lila Carbassi, Chief of Programs, United Nations Global Compact, to have been with us this afternoon. I want to thank you, Lila. I want also to thank Steve Kenzie, Executive Director of UN Global Compact Network UK.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you to you. And also I want to thank, but also to say to Daniela Bernacchi, Executive Director of the UN Global Compact Network Italy. I want to thank you for being here today, but also for the huge and the terrific work that Global Compact is doing in Italy and worldwide, in Italy through you and worldwide through your colleague, because we can't lose the momentum. Today we have a huge opportunity to make a big jump in the right direction, and you are contributing to this challenge in a very good way. So I want to thank all of you for participating and attending at this meeting, and next year we will meet again to read about the outcome of COP26, but also to share the new challenging goals that we will have. So good afternoon and thank you again.
Thank you.